In this special edition of Sunlight Matters, Dave and Georg are joined by Paul Rogers to discuss light and life. This podcast episode is brought to you from a rooftop terrace in Alicante.
Welcome to Sunlight Matters, the podcast that reconnects us with the sun. Join us as we explore the power and influence of our star, the force at the heart of everything. Each episode, we speak with leading experts to uncover the ways sunlight shapes our world.
Here we are on the first Sunlight Matters in-person podcast.
On location.
On location in Alicante, which is the city of light, I believe.
I believe that's what the Romans called it, yes?
Yes. So we're here as guests of Paul. So Paul, thank you so much for having Georg and I.
I'm really glad that you guys can come down.
Yeah, really, thanks for having us.
But look, this is an amazing place. We're sat on a roof terrace, enjoying the sun. And I think that's why we're here, is because of the sun.
Well, I can tell you that at this time, the sun is definitely out in Stockholm, but it's not quite this warm. So it's...
No, I mean, and I left behind a very murky UK yesterday.
Well, is the UK ever anything but? No, just... Sorry.
No, very true. But listen, I was kind of keen to kind of understand what from your point of view, why you chose this lovely flat, and talk about this space here. Because...
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I guess we had been to Alicante a couple of times with the kids when they were very young, 3 and 5 years old. And we just found it a very easy city to get around. It's a nice size. I guess it's around 300,000. There's something nice that happens, I guess, with cities that size. There's sort of often enough to do during the day and at night, but they're not so big that they're a challenge. So it just seemed like really nice. So we went, we got shut in with COVID there. And originally, my wife, she was looking at summer cottages in Sweden because, they thought, well, maybe we want a place to get away from our first house on occasion. And I really wasn't interested. But then she started to pull up these ads from Spain. And I felt like my eyes were glued to the screen. And I didn't realize... My wife's very good at pointing out things that I want and directions, but way before I knew them. And then I realized that this is actually a dream I've had for maybe 20 years. And turning 50, I wasn't getting any older. I didn't want a sports car. So I figured, well, the money could go to just sit in the bank, or we're lucky enough to have a little bit of extra. And we thought, well, why not? I'm not getting any younger. And this is something that I want. And we had this grind of the Scandinavian winters. I guess you have it in the UK, but I think there's a different magnitude of darkness in Scandinavia. And I found the trips that we had here really had filled up the battery. And at that time, I felt like I didn't really want to travel too far from home with the uncertainty that COVID brought. And it just made sense that I really would like a place that we could call. And to travel is often there's inconvenience, but to have a place like this, with an underwear drawer and your socks, and to be able to show up and enjoy the place. So we went ahead and we did it. The conditions were very favorable with regards to interest rates, and the Swedish kroner had a good exchange rate. And a friend of mine had said, if you ever find a place that you really like, and are interested in buying it, don't hesitate, because chances are other people will see, if you have an opportunity, take it. Because he had done that in the Rocky Mountains in Canada, and 10 years later, he owned a company and had a lot of money, but he said, quite frankly, I can't afford it now. And so we acted, and that, it wasn't very long, interest rates went up and the Swedish kroner went down. And suddenly all you Brits came in and started driving up the prices in this area. And sure enough, it just took a couple of years, and maybe it's sort of outside our price point now. But it was funny because we originally had our site set on another place a couple blocks away. It was lower down. We just had a balcony. We didn't get it. My wife was quite upset.
So that was your first try?
Yeah. And we put a bid on it and everything, and we didn't get it. And then she looped back around to this one, and I said, the windows are small. It's going to be too dark. She's like, no, I believe in this. And like most things I've learned, if I listen to my wife, then good things will happen. And I wouldn't have it. I wouldn't have.
Nice,
It's a life lesson we have.
Well, she's a very smart woman, and she had as her focus the terrace. She said, well, maybe it doesn't matter. She said, first of all, I don't think it's that dark. She's telling the daylight expert she didn't think it was that dark. It turns out she's right. And then also she placed the value on the terrace.
Yeah. So she saw the terrace before you?
I knew the terrace would be an advantage. I guess I didn't realize how much of an advantage it would be. And quite frankly, the place is sort of falling apart a bit. That's why we could afford the roof leaks and a few other things. There's no insulation in it or whatever, but we love it, and we wouldn't.
I mean, if you get off the roof completely, you have even more sun, right?
Yeah.
It's a roof.
Exactly. So it's such a good match for us. And well, the fact that it's an older place from 1910, and we can give it a little care and feeding. And
1910?
I think something like that.
Wow.
So we can give it a little bit of care and feeding. The facade belongs not to us, but it belongs to the what they call the community, which is, I guess, the condo board, and the roof. So it's a little bit worn by Swedish standards, but by Spanish standards, its facade's in quite good shape. And so we have to reassess a little bit our level of what what good maintenance is. But we really feel it's been such a good choice for us to find and be able to tank up. I find the Scandinavian winters, they don't wear me down quite at all, because every so often we can go and...
Well, I mean, it's incredible, because here we are, it's early March, and the sun's almost...
Yeah, and you're sitting sort of just starting to get the solar altitude. I think in about an hour, you're going to be in about half. It's a good thing. Hopefully we'll be done in an hour, because I think you're going to be pretty hot.
Yeah, I can feel I'm already... So it feels like a English kind of early summer's day. Already.
Yeah. This is more like Swedish summer. This is the height of the...
My wife is very similar. She can see things I can't see.
Yeah.
So, it's good your wife persuaded, because this is incredible. And what I hadn't understood about Alicante was just the number of terraces. So we've been up and we've had a look down on the city, and it's
there's small scale, and there's a neighborhood barrio. It's called barrio, which just means neighborhood, but that's what they refer to it as here. And just a small scale, 2-3 stories with this sort of tapestry of different terraces of different heights. And it makes for a really interesting problem with solar exposure, challenge to get that proper resolution, because within 2 meters, there's a lot of variation with scale and height. And
we'll insert some video into this, because I think, what you can then see is exactly that, what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it can be easy to miss in these analyses, is that a couple of square meters of sun is enough to have a conversation, or that the vertical extents of a wall lit next to maybe the floor's not as well lit, that's enough to start warming and have a reflected space. But we shouldn't miss the fact, we're giving a very Nordic or Northern European context here. During the summer, it works the other way.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed learning this climate, because I never really experienced this climate or warm climate throughout the year. So it's one of these things in your brain, but then that's another thing you actually could feel in your body. So it didn't take me very long in the summer to find the shadow. So something like shadow map I would use to find what's in the shadow. So there's actually a turning point maybe in the day, somewhere in the season around April, you start to shift from mapping the patches of sun to matching the patches of shade.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and it happens actually fairly quickly.
I mean, it's interesting because your perspective is really interesting, because you're because you live in Scandinavia.
Yeah, which is so dark.
Yeah, but you're very sensitive to that. And some of the conversations I've had and Georg and I have had have been with people who live in like places like California or Greece, or where they talk about actually you don't need the sun analysis, but what you probably need is that shade analysis.
I have a really good coworker, and she's from Greece, and she doesn't like the sun, and it's fascinating to hear that perspective. She'll go home because we closed the office for 3 weeks, which is a very Scandinavian thing to do. I love that. And she often goes home, but she'd rather not go then because it's just too darn hot and she's going to have to be indoors all day. And this is something that the Southern Europeans that work on my team, this is a perspective that I had never really thought about because, of course, in Scandinavia or Canada, that's when you have to make use of the weather. The saying that the Swedish summer is the nicest day of the year. You got to really maximize that little time that you have. So that's been it. But now that I've had this context, I can see a little bit more about that perspective because we actually didn't buy it for the summer. Although my wife, she does like the heat. It's really, I can take it or leave it. By the time we've had a couple of weeks in the summer, I think I'm ready to go back to Scandinavia to have a little bit.
Like 2 to 3 weeks, and then it's enough.
That is enough for me. I'm kind of glad to get on that airplane. I'm sort of worn down.
But it's always different when you imagine that you live at some place.
Yeah.
Like you can't escape. Basically, you're stuck there.
Yeah, and again, it's what you think it's going to be like, and then what you experience. And for so long, I was living with sort of a deficit of sun. So to have this other side that you see, it's maximized. Really, it goes back and you learn to appreciate the darkness, or not so much the darkness, but the more gentle climate of Scandinavia. It's a little bit if I'm in Canada during the summer, I'm really glad because it gets dark at night, which it doesn't get in Scandinavia. Yeah. So you learn to appreciate subtle things with the other climate because you've had this balance. But to sort of face the sun and see the challenges, the way that my Greek colleague sees it, is sort of raised an understanding. And again, it has to do with the memory of your body, as opposed to, you can read it or you can think it, but when you actually feel it for a while, then you understand it on
which reminds me of this conversation we had the other day about both of us realizing that we spent significant time in living in basements.
Yeah,
which is wild. And that was really like for me the realization, because before that, like I didn't really care so much about sunlight. But then when I had a diet, you could say, for 2.5 years. I mean, I wasn't 24/7 in this basement, but it was my room, like in a flat chair.
Yeah.
And man, like this lack of light for such a long time, I had dreams. Like I was dreaming that this little wall behind my desk falls down. I was like a beautiful horses running around. So
that's your body telling you.
That is definitely your body and your psyche telling you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And my
but even the lack of view,
Yeah, totally. But it really it made me realize how much I love the sun, because I got disconnected.
Yeah, we had moved out of my parents' home, so I was I guess around 23, and I was still in architecture school, living at home. And then I went to Helsinki for a while to do my final studio. And then shortly after that, we moved into a regular bungalow because my parents were downsizing because they could see that I was going to move out soon.
Yeah,
of course, I was broke, having lived in Finland on my own for a number of months. So we didn't move out right away, but I started to get ready. So I was in this basement, and I got a really, for that age and the amount of experience I had, I was lucky, and I got a good job planning out libraries. And so I took that money and I bought a computer. So I sat in that basement that entire summer, and I had this great, like really fun job to go in and measure out libraries. We were planning to move them. It was a great challenge. And it was a very happy time, but I felt really depressed. I couldn't understand why. And of course, in retrospect, I look back and 8 hours a day in that basement with just these, little two little windows. I think we often talk about window area ratio. That's it's the ratio of the room size to the glass, the glazed area. And generally speaking, depending on climate, you think it's around 10%. Many countries have this in their building codes, around 15%.
So it's the ratio between window surface and the interior surface of the room?
No, the floor space. It's very simple. Okay. It's just your floor space against the glazed area.
Get it.
It's the most simple of daylight metrics. So often you say 10% is a rule of thumb. Some countries lean to 15. So I would say I probably had around 1%. So I probably had about a tenth of the light down there. So
more than I
should have had. And so it's no wonder that I felt kind of desperate but the thing was, you still have to work 8 hours a day. So that doesn't mean you can take 2 hours off in the afternoon. Like you would go up and you might have 15 minutes, but then you're back to the dungeon again. So I was quite happy to finally move out. And so when I was looking for apartments, and in those days, it was the 90s, and in my home city, Winnipeg, it was, let's just say the real estate market was not on the top. So you could look at 10 apartments a day and take your pick. So the first apartment, when I looked at nothing really, and then the last one I looked at, it was towards the end of the day, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I remember the door opening. The landlord just gave me the key, and I went up on my own, up in the door, and it was like this wall of light hitting me in the face. And I knew right then, I'm like, this is it. Now it was a similar size. It was a similar style to the house that I grew up in. So that helped as well. And I just knew right away it had, the room was not deep. The window was horizontal. It was unobstructed to the south. And it had this advantage of the building in front of it was just at a height that it gave reflectance. So it was lower than the window, my window. So it gave extra reflectance to the roof, to the ceiling of my room.
Oh, nice.
So, and I think it was about maybe €300 per month or something like that. It was 65 square meters with parking. I mean, this is unheard of now. I mean, you could never get this, but it was just so well lit, and it was just such a light apartment, but it did overheat. I didn't really have any. I was so at a deficit for light. I just went without any solar shading at all. Like I didn't have any blinds whatsoever, not even in the bedroom, because I just felt like I was just at such a deficit. And the whole building, it would get to first few days it was of hot weather. And when I say hot, I mean Canada hot, 30 degrees. I don't mean Bali hot. It was okay because the building had some thermal inertia. But then after maybe the third day, the building had sucked up all the heat. So it would be around 29, 30 degrees. And it certainly didn't help that I didn't have any solar shading. But the windows were quite, they had no solar protection at all. They were quite crappy windows, but the frames were thin, and I appreciated that. So we got maximum glass area.
Did you wake up with the morning sun?
Yeah. Pretty much. But I think I was still a little younger, so my sleep rhythms were maybe a little different.
Yeah.
I think as I've grown older, my chronotype somewhat has changed. Initially, I think it was easier for me to sleep in the morning. So now as soon as the sun is up, I kind of...
It's really, I mean, it's interesting that, because I mean, as you both talking, I'm suddenly thinking about my experience. So I went to university in Birmingham in the UK.
Yeah.
And I actually hated university, and I came out and I think was pretty depressed. And as you're talking, I'm remembering the house I lived in, and I've often blamed the house I'm lived in for my depression.
Yeah.
Because it was very mouldy, but it was also mouldy and very dark.
Yeah.
And
there's a connection between natural
and it's sort of fascinating that those, like your basement experience, Georg, and your experience with living in a basement.
Yeah. And you're right, there is that humidity and that, because you don't have the cleansing effect.
Well, totally. It's that whole thing. But I think it's then shaped, perhaps, your sensitivity towards sunlight. So, now I'm thinking, well, actually, that's probably what was going on with me, because the house was a horrible house, but very dark.
Yeah. Well, some will be more sensitive to it than others. So,
well, I think that's right. But I think that you may have these sort of moments in your life where, with subconsciously, you're kind of connecting the dots in terms of this. So I've always then been very interested in the polite aspect of the houses I've lived in. And then, look at us this morning. The three of us stood by the side of the Mediterranean Sea watching the sunrise, and having a great time.
Yeah, but it does come with a degree of privilege. And there is, later in life, let's say you've been lucky enough to be able to take a post-secondary degree and lucky enough to get a good job. And then you have these luxuries, but the fact remains there's a good portion of the population that doesn't have that.
No, I think that's right.
And there is a tendency even now also with students to say, well, we will give them crap, very difficult, because they just want to get out of the house. And to some degree that's true, but the bar has dropped very low with what, at least in Sweden, what is acceptable and what kind of difficult circumstances. And I think it's a particular challenge when you look at mental health amongst young women of that age. There are some challenges there. And it seems like that's probably the last group you should be putting in a moldy, dark. And it doesn't
I
make
agree.
any sense.
I mean, I think this is all part of, our schools are poorly lit. Like in the UK, our schools are poorly lit. We don't have, many schools have had to sell off land for housing because they can't afford, budgets and things. So you've got kids not going outside. And then, as you say, you go into the, my son's in the, he's got beautiful university accommodation.
Yeah.
But the window's like this.
Yeah.
So they've just basically said.
Well, you saw there's that discussion, I can't remember, at one of the American universities to have this windowless student residence.
Yeah, I've read about. I mean,
it's terrible.
It's absolutely terrible. It's absolutely. I mean, I would ask you this question. I mean, you talk about privilege. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Imagine you could afford a glass-fronted BG, amazing luxurious flat on the waterfront here, but you didn't have the terrace.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't give that up. I'd rather, the sound of the water is nice and everything. And I think what the water offers, it offers that, I mean, the breezes are nice when it gets hot. But we still can get a few breezes from here. But then you get the reflection of the sky off the water and you can read the weather. Everything's mirrored. But for me, to be able to move around and have actually what is essentially a large outdoor room to be able to be outside. And again, we didn't necessarily buy this place. Again, we didn't necessarily buy this place for the summer. I bought it for now when I'm really needing and the winter and the autumn when the kids are off, these different sort of intervals over. I think that in the summer, we can't really be out here at certain times. But in the mornings, it's amazing when it's first starting to warm up and the sun is first starting to warm up. And then maybe you can get a little bit of time before it starts to heat up. And in the afternoon, it's unusable. But other than that, like for the rest of the year, as soon as the sun comes out, here we are. And it just feels so good. It's this little 3x3 meter, or maybe even 2x2 space is so important to me, and it gives me really a sense of well-being. This is, I think you're sitting in one of my favorite spots ever in the world, and the access,
I can understand why.
The access to the sun is really what drives that. And you were here yesterday, and it was mixing, is sort of teasing us. It was mixing between cloud, sun, and those moments to sun. It's kind of nice in some ways, but those moments when the sun came out, we're like, this is...
Yeah, because you feel it like I said it when I arrived, like the Spanish sun, it has more power than the Austrian sun. Like if there's a cloud, it's cold immediately, but if the cloud is gone and you feel it radiating in your skin.
It's the IR just sort of blasting, blasting your cells.
I think it's kind of fascinating what we talked before, like being in this basement, like kind of sun deprived, and it reminded me of like going on a diet, like when you eat a lot and then you just stop eating, which I actually haven't done, but you go on a diet. So you regain this appreciation of it. And it also reminded me of, there are some retreats where you go into a dark room and it's completely, there's no light at all. And you stay there for 10 days or longer. And they give you the food through like a double door so that you never have any sunlight.
And this is something you pay for?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is like after some days, you even, because there is never any light, you see hallucinations and stuff. And you also like, you're confronted with some stuff inside you. But then like what they say, like after these 10 days, 20 days, whatever, they blindfold you and then they bring you outside to some like beautiful mountain, and then they let you watch the sunrise. So they lift on, and the people, they have like amazing experience. Like, oh my God. Like,
but wasn't that when you moved from your basement? Did you have the same experience?
Yeah. I mean, I was not locked into this basement. But, I mean, it makes so much sense, you know, like also like something that is so crucial for our well-being and life and everything. To detach from it for a while, to re-appreciate it.
But what sort of space have you had that you have really appreciated? Like, is there something that you've felt that where you've lived where you said this is optimal? Have you had something like that?
I mean, in my childhood, the house of my parents, which is like Bad Vöslau, like 40 kilometers from Vienna, and in the springtime, the sun was rising directly through the veranda. I don't know if
that's the same word,
veranda thing,
in English,
into the living room, and you had like this golden light on the walls, and my mom had some crystals standing there.
So they got the caustic.
You have like the rainbow things. And that was just, you know, like when the springtime arrived, and I was have vivid memories when I got to kindergarten, and it was like the time where we were allowed to ride our bikes into the kindergarten, and the smell and the air, and it's just like, this really hits me. I had this actually like a week ago in Vienna. We had already some nice warm weather, which was really surprisingly, and I also was riding my bike, and like some of these core memories as a child, they come back and you really feel them, like 80-90% you're there.
But
it's
I think
awesome.
You've got this, exactly, the core memories as a child. And again, we get back to, am I going to be in a position where I can offer my children an environment which is not only safe, but also has that aspect to it, to light. And for me, so I'd rather take a smaller house with a couple of skylights. Like I've got a couple of skylights, and for me, it sounds stupid, but I almost measure my success. I look at those damn skylights and I'm like, I really got what I wanted. I mean, when you top light a space, it adds a completely different dynamic, and you can even bring greenery into the center of the house.
Okay. So you have like direct holes into the sky, or is it like,
And it allows like to be able to have a big cluster of green in the middle, which was normally sort of the darker part of the room.
That's cool.
And there's many aspects in a house like this. I often in my lectures talk about this house, and it's one of the reasons we bought it. It's from the 50s. It has it's well thought out daylight planning. So in the mornings, the sun comes up in the north at the back of the house. It gives sort of a warm glow through the kids' rooms and through our room, sort of wakes us up. In the middle of summer, well, maybe it's not as appreciated as in the middle of winter. And then you have this low angle sun, which often would normally come in and cause glare. And it's strong enough at that time that maybe you don't want it hitting you right in the face at low angle. But at that point, and I've used shadow map actually to describe this, when it hits the gable of the house, like, because it's a row house where we don't have, that's actually the time so we don't get that low angle in your face. Like when sun enters a room and hits a wall, that's a very good thing. But if it hits your face, or goes deep into the room, that's another thing. So you want sun to sort of glance in at an angle and hit something and diffuse rather than getting the direct beam. So what happens around maybe 10 o'clock in the summer, or in the winter, maybe around 10 o'clock when the sun's coming up, then it's starting to come around to the south, and there we're fully open. But by then, the sun's in the winter is weak, and we don't feel like we have to have protection from it. Or in the summer, it's high enough that we can put down an awning and get a really good diffuse light. And we also have the skylight to contribute. So it's a very nice light there. And it's interesting, the patch of the skylight, it moves far more than you think over the course of the day. So it starts up one wall and it even connects into different rooms, which is quite
cool.
Yeah. And especially around midsummer, it starts to create all sorts of tricks and refractions, and it's particularly strong. So we'll bounce off. We have a picture, which is glass, and then sometimes the patch will hit that and then it bounces. And so over the course of the day, it's going to move, and then we're getting back around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Then it's that really nasty low angle. It's often hot, but then it's on the other gable. So it disappears again, but the skylight's still giving us good light in that room. But there's something neat about that late afternoon sun when it starts to cut in at that nice angle. It's not going deep into the room, but it's just sort of cutting in. It will connect down our staircase into where our living room is. And that room has, to the north, it has these huge strip windows, almost the whole width through. It's much it's a much wider room than it is deep. So that is a good thing to start with. But then, because you get light from the back of the room through the staircase, you get this injection of diffuse, very warm sunlight. So you've got cool blue light flooding in nicely from the north. And then you get this injection of sunlight, which is diffuse and warm. It's the most amazing, because in some parts of that room, it's lighter towards the back of what you would traditionally call the back of the room. And that's over, maybe that's about an hour and a half. You get this very unique condition. I've tried to photograph it. It's impossible. The camera can't really make sense.
But I mean, when you say like you try to photograph it, like it really seems that you are very passionate about this. And then when you think about like more regular people, they might not even be aware.
I think you'd be aware. You would be struck by this.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, because I think I think they would be aware, but they wouldn't know how to articulate that awareness. I think that's the problem.
Well, I think quite often with rooms, a room can have big windows and still be gloomy because the back of the room is dark. So if you have a 6 meter deep room that's not very wide across the facade, you're going to have a lot of contrast, and it's difficult for your eye to adjust. But the room I'm describing, like it's almost like a white diffuse blanket over the room. But later on, what happens is then when it's starting to get low and nasty again, we lose it on that other gable. And it's so nice during the summer when maybe around 7 o'clock, or the sun's starting to lose a little power, 8 o'clock at night, it comes back around the north again, and sort of says good night to us around the time we're going to bed. So you really get the sense that the sun is taking you through the day.
Right.
You can you can almost mark the passage of time at what point of the day it is by the position of the sun. And again, trying to explain this, I did it usually through photographs, but lately I've been using shadow map, and it explains that relationship so much better, right? I can't expect people to listen to every word I've said and follow the train of thought, but then when you can show them, shadow map is much.
But you know, like what I think is that when I don't know, I was on vacation and there was like a nice home, and I just felt very happy and alive and energized, and I didn't even think about the sunlight, you know. I was not aware enough or like focused on the topic enough. So what I could imagine that many people, they are maybe not so energized and not so happy because they're lacking it, and some have it and they don't even realize it's the sun, which is actually the driving factor.
Yeah, I think it's very common to move into an apartment and not realize maybe what the conditions are there. And then after a year and a half, I do think dark apartments, nobody's done a study of this, but I would expect that dark apartments usually, there's many things that go into having a house, right? And maybe you've got a daycare that you particularly like, or a school. But I do think the turnover in dark, in the Nordic and in the Northern Europe context, the turnover in dark, and even to some degree, I think even when you get into these tight urban contexts in Southern Europe, dark apartments probably turn over more like we shouldn't miss the fact that there are many people in Greece or Spain or Portugal that in fact are on the lower floors because they'd actually feel a lack of light as well. And there is, for example, in Greece, there is planning guidelines that, from what I understand, that address that. Now, whether or not they're followed is a different situation, but there is still just because you live in a more southern country and you are out more often shouldn't necessarily mean that you have to live dark. But definitely one thing I know is in a Scandinavian context, you shouldn't have to live dark. But there's costs of construction, there's land costs, and there's really a unique challenge to house everybody, but to do it in a manner that you're not compromising some of these basic things.
I think as within so many things, it always starts with awareness, I would say. If you make it easily approachable to understand, then you can optimize towards it.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm interested because it's like you think of Alicante.
Mm.
We were talking about this. I came in from Gatwick yesterday, absolutely rammed. So you've got large numbers of Brits who are doing the same as you, escaping the winter coming
the Northern
here.
Europeans.
Northern Europeans coming here. Nobody's told them that that's a thing to do. It's just they know subconsciously that that's a good thing to do for them.
Yeah, well, and I think particularly acute regarding what their condition at home is.
And that would be really interesting is to go back and ask them what's your house like?
Yeah.
I mean,
but the irony is that many of those people living with less access to light will also be the ones that can't afford to go to Alicante.
I totally agree, and I think so. There's multi layers to this. One is obviously, light needs to be considered an absolute priority. I think for people. Yeah. Be that through social housing and or whatever it is, it needs to be a priority. At the moment, it's nowhere to be seen in much of the legislation that's out there.
Yeah, because the UK, and I think we've talked about this before, it has no mandatory requirement. It has recommendations, and I know there's been some work to bring that up to Parliament.
But I think that's right. But it also, like to Georg's point, this is about awareness as well.
Oh yeah,
so
a consumer ultimately can drive.
The consumer
discussion.
needs. So when, like, I think, one of our jobs is to say, well, the fact that you get on a plane and come to Alicante is because your body needs sunlight. You don't know that that's the reason, but your subconscious, your whatever it is, your mitochondria are telling you this.
Yeah, and particularly but what is interesting is this attraction to the beach. Why?
Totally. And we talked a bit about that this morning. Is why do people end up on the beach as well? But there's something so subconscious there. But equally, going back to your description of your house. Like, I think that's so eloquent and beautiful, but most people aren't able to kind of intellectualize lighting in their house in the same way. But if they were, they would probably demand different solutions to the ones that they have. And I think it's sort of like, how do we get people to give them the words to speak?
It's difficult to assess unless you have a tool to assess it.
And I think this is, why actually Shadow Mat for me is such a powerful tool, because I told you my story of my house is I fell in love with it, bought it, fell out of love with it because I didn't think it was great from a light point of view, because I just was being like, I don't know, just wasn't really thinking it through, and then discovered that actually it's a brilliant house from a light point of view. It's just, you've got to optimize the moments. Like, it gets fantastic morning light.
Yeah.
So that, which is the for me, the most important thing.
Is it a 2-story house?
It's a 2-story house. Okay,
so you couldn't necessarily, inserting skylights would only be on the bedroom level there.
Well, potentially we could, and we're actually thinking of going up into the loft, and we would move our bedroom into the loft with skylights there as well. But it's actually got great light, and it was just like I needed to be told almost that it wasn't as bad as and it sounds really weird, but it's sort of by mapping it out through Shadow Map, I kind of went, oh, I'm just being stupid in a way.
Where the light is at the particular time.
Exactly.
I think you would find if you were to maybe cut an extra window, so if you have possibility of light for 2 directions, that's very good. But also, a skylight is very transformative to a room. I think you really never have good daylight unless you have a skylight.
Can you retrofit them easily?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And I think that's been a major discussion point. Is it's very big in Denmark to renovate attic spaces because there you, rather than build something dense in a courtyard to fill in a courtyard with a new building, I'd rather that attic space is excellent. There's a lot of light falling on that roof, so you can make very bright spaces, and so attic renovation is one way that we can find more places to live and that are well lit and give a good opportunity there. But I'd definitely look into it because, like I said, for me it's always been a dream to have. The first one I had was in a hotel or one of these resorts in Spain, and they had in the bathroom just a single glass and like basically a hole with a single glass in it, and the light that came through that was unbelievable. Like, now it makes a big difference, the aperture, like how deep it is, how wide it is, whether it's splayed or there's a lot of stuff that can happen there. And that's, I think then I realized like I want one of those. I really hope I can have it's something that if most people don't have that opportunity, but if it's certainly worth a try.
It's nice that you would measure wealth in the amount of skylights you have.
Or the quality of daylight that I have. Yeah.
The first time I'm hearing this.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice way of.
Yeah. Like I said, you could offer me a Lamborghini, but I take 3 skylights over that.
All right.
I've been thinking about doing it here because you think about the main room here, it would just be amazing with a skylight.
Yeah.
But we've already had problems with the roof leaking, and we don't own the roof, so I'm not really ready.
As I said, just get rid of the roof, man.
Yeah. Well, my wife was saying that, well, we may just have to end up repairing the roof with our own money, and in that way we could just put in the damn skylight and give it, because it would become a next level space in there. Like now it's nice. You got light really from 3 directions, which is pretty nice. But then that would really open it to the sky.
How would you make it like in the middle of summer when it's like super hot? Do you have then like...
Well, it does have the advantage. Yeah. It does have the advantage of facing a little bit north. So you get a built-in motorized shade probably, and that shade has depending on how much you're willing to spend, but I would definitely invest in one that is metallized. It's a high performance shade, and I would get a skylight that also has a solar protection coating, so it wouldn't be the most clear skylight, but it doesn't need to be because it's open to the sky. So I think a light transmittance of say 50% on something like that is enough. Like you wouldn't have a light transmittance of 70%. That would be quite high. Yeah. But between a glass that's a little tinted and this metallized shade, which costs a little more, which has a thin coating of aluminum on it, I think you'd be fairly well protected. If it were facing south, I wouldn't be too sure. And it depends on the size of the skylight. I see that a lot with architects where they want to put in skylights and then they'll have double the area that they should. So it's important that people don't overdo it as well. You've got to have a balance there with heating loads and a solar shading strategy that matches your ambition.
I mean, it's interesting. So these sort of solar coating as well. I mean, we've just did a podcast with a glazing specialist, and we were talking about like UV and infrared coming through.
Yeah, and the infrared gets taken out with the solar coating.
But in this instance, that's not a problem because you've got this. I mean, I'm guessing the deck you could be out pretty much year round.
And that's, I mean, even when it's cloudy or there's not direct sun, we're still getting in. The fact is, when we're here, now some of it has to do with the kids aren't in school. That we have when they are on break, we don't have the demands. The same demands that we do when we're at home and the kids are in school and we're working. We still might have to work, but we find the time to get out and walk because, it's not, I try to walk a lot in a day, but sometimes in the winter, I'm at about 4 kilometers or 3.5 kilometers, and I really want to go outside, but it's rainy and it's, it's very dark. It's been dark for 3 hours and you really got to push yourself to get out. But here, I find I can go for a walk at 10 o'clock in January. So we're out a lot more, not just here, but also walking around. We try to get up early, get our work out of the way, and then get out in the peak of the day and move around the city and try to find the sunny spots during the winter.
I mean, it's interesting, again, you think about people trying to maximize, who's sort of listen to various podcasts. They're like, okay, I believe in light from a health point of view. I think coming to a place like Alicante is not a bad idea in winter. It's sort of fairly easy to get to.
Yeah.
But the quality of light is unbelievable.
Well, yeah, I mean, even already I find it to be a very white light compared to the sort of, even especially during summer, it's a deep blue sky, and the light becomes almost, there's even the reflected light is of a magnitude which is formidable. So you can be out of the sun, but still be getting quite a bit of radiation. There's so much around reflection and scattered, and it's a whole different.
Nevertheless, I think like you envisioned me in a Portuguese fisher.
Yeah,
town.
I mean, if you can do it, you gotta put your Lamborghini away. No Ferrari, no Lamborghini. I see you living in a
and there I would really like to have like a skylight.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying it, because I think it's technically possible somehow. And you have like on the wall like a little panel with 2 sliders and one slider for the infrared throughput and transmittance, and the other one for the UV transmittance, and you can just choose what you want. And, like in winter, when it's cold outside and you want to still like get some
a tunable glaze.
Yeah, exactly. You
glaze.
just open up fully and you have nice radiation.
I mean,
in summer you just lock it down.
I'm asking you, if you do that, do you envision yourself being indoors that much?
Indoors? What does
Are you inside? Inside?
Yeah, when it's cold in winter.
But you'll be out. You will be out way more than you would. Like,
it's going to be cheaper to get a dog.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be like Temu, €10. You just order it, install it, and you have all the features. And like eventually.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be available. I don't think it's available.
Technology is not really.
Not right now. Yeah. But I think eventually. Well, I mean, you have electric chroma glazing, which will dull down or darken down in particular situations, and it's fairly. They haven't reached the point in the production where it's necessarily inexpensive, but it could be. Some people will have come across it in some aircraft models have this,
like Star Trek force fields.
That's the next thing. Well, there is this. There are interesting glazing technologies like vacuum glass or aerogel, but that's more for heat flow, for thermal, rather than taking care of radiation. But I'm not sure. And to one degree, you can solve daylighting with technology like light pipes or fiber optic solutions where you have a collector that's 10 meters away and then But I think the physics is fairly simple where daylighting isn't going to change that much. It is still a vertical window or a horizontal window that we're talking about. The aperture and the architectural sort of facts of lighting a room are not going to change with technology. That's sort of fine tuning or whatever. But it does enable us to do certain things that maybe we couldn't do otherwise, just to push it.
It's like I'm just aware of these office buildings, like even in Vienna, in summer, it gets hot and you have like these fully glazed facades.
Yeah.
And it gets super hot and you need to invest lots of energy.
Well, not if done correctly. I mean,
they probably
have to, you can't really talk daylight design. There's this assumption that I just want a lot of daylight. That's not true. The control glare of glare and overheating is really part of the package. That
it should be, right?
It is because I'm lucky enough to work with somebody. My office is extremely knowledgeable about thermal comfort. And he's really been able to open my eyes to sort of the subtlety of airflows and how to work with the dialogue of the human body with these sort of energetics of everything around us. It's really interesting. I've sort of opened more up to, because ultimately you want a good visual environment, but it's extremely important to have a good thermal environment as well. And these two are obviously not to be done exclusively. They quite are often done exclusively from one another, but they need to be handled. And I think it makes a powerful pair when you have a team that has both of those aspects, because the tendency is often to actually control the thermal aspects and put a higher priority on that than what maybe the visual aspects are. So you can get into a position where the building is optimized against overheating, but nobody's taken into account glare. Do you need two shading systems, or how does it all go together? Because ultimately the building isn't there. We're not trying to make the building happy. We're trying to make the occupants happy, but we've designed something where the shading system is really tuned for the building. So that is something that maybe is considered sometimes and maybe less considered others. I think there needs to be a little more balance in also thinking about the visual environment and how we deal with that.
What do you mean by visual environment?
Protection from glare and what kind of light is it?
Glare would be neighboring buildings,
no,
sunlight,
that too. But the majority of glare is when somebody just gets the sun straight in their face.
Okay.
But reflected glare. There's lots of different cases where we've seen a bit of an upswing of cases where people install photovoltaic panels in tight quarters. So of course you can get wicked reflection off of. So that's an aspect. But glare in general just mean too much light coming into the eye. And again, people are very different in what their sensitivity is. Ultimately, you have to provide them with the tool to regulate and decide when they want to deploy that aspect. So for thermal in office buildings, normally the shade is deployed by a machine. Quite often popular when the sensor maybe is not set perfectly or a certain condition exists and people are quite happy with the daylit environment, but the shades go down. It's quite a bit darker. Yeah. And then there could be some arguments of whether or not when to put it up and stuff like that. But then when you have, it's important it's set to reset itself, to redeploy the shade up again when the condition of glare is passed or of overheating is passed. But then the glare is really has to be operated on the user level. Because I've been into offices where people have one of the offices that I worked at formerly, they hadn't yet outfitted the windows. We had just moved and we hadn't yet outfitted the windows for glare protection. So people were taking like old drawings and taping them up over the windows and just kind of leaving them there. Mm-hmm. So for me to bring clients in and I'm trying to sell good visual environment and they walk in and see this. Yeah. Now, eventually we got the shading in place, but it was quite funny to see people going to different extents in what they would do to try to keep from getting the sun in their face.
It's interesting. We have a customer, Sage Glass.
Yeah.
And they have these automized windows with like sensors.
The electrochromic is what it's called. Yeah. The non-brand name was
nice. Yeah, drop it. It's good for me to learn as well. And they use Shadow Map to replace their sensors because the sensors are faulty. They stop working. Yeah. And they just take the software. Yeah. And see when the sun hits that surface, and then they trigger.
Yeah, they can form their sensor based on that kind of data.
Yeah.
And there's some interesting projects, and I do think sensors will continue to develop. But I think it's really key that it can be underestimated a lot when what I do in, with the simulation stuff, just how key. We've got an individual at our work who is specialized in just that, the installation of solar shading. So ultimately he's at a key point to whether or not that system is going to work. I think it can be underestimated. Yeah, we'll just install it and see how it is. And in fact, somebody like Tony is his name, is really critical. And you can envision a car or some technology, but then whoever actually puts that thing together is tremendously important. And he's quite unique in his knowledge. We're really, really lucky to have that on the team.
So I mean, I'm kind of keen. I could see clouds turning up. But
those two of them.
Yeah,
they'll burn off. Don't worry.
Yeah, no. Well, no. I mean, I'm just.
You'll be glad to see them in about half an hour.
What else have you got in store for us in terms of Alicante itself?
Well, I thought we've been down and we've watched the sun go up over the water, and it was interesting. It was a much slower process than I had expected. Now in Scandinavia, we always have this. The angle of declination of the sun is so low that I'm used to extended sunrise and sunsets. But I thought with a drop of latitude that it would be more instantaneous. But actually, it took us, an hour?
It was an hour, yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is...
We were wearing shorts.
And I was wearing...
And you were you, yeah.
I was told.
Yeah, sucker. So even, again, this is something that actually I found quite educational. Like I could see the data and I could look it up, and I hadn't seen it in that particular. I hadn't considered that. So to be there and actually, it was quite educational to see how long it took. But we put you through that, and so we'll after we finish the podcast here, I figure we'll grab a coffee and some lunch and head up to the castle. And the castle is quite nice because. Yeah, it's extremely high in the air. It's not a castle in the sky, but it's about as close as you're going to come. And what that means is you don't need a software to tell you that it's always in the sun. So
we checked anyways, right?
Because around this time of year, around 3:00, much of the city, you really have to hunt at 3:00 in the afternoon where you're going to get a sunny place. There aren't a lot of them, and it's good if you do a little reconnaissance so you can get there early before everybody else, because as soon as by the time the sun hits it, it doesn't take long to fill it up. So ultimately, you want to be in it while it's still in shadow. I mean,
you're right, because when we were walking back, because we had a little walk around, all the cafes were empty on the terraces except for the ones in the sun. Which,
But if you have some advanced knowledge there, it'll help you out. But then we'll walk up to the castle, and I don't know if we'll be there long enough to watch the sunset. But I'd even be happy.
I wanna just walk up later and really aim for the sunset.
Yeah,
it should be like going down behind the hills, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I
would love
to be quite honest with you. I mean, I'd be quite happy to after we stop recording, just be out here. And I really feel that there's not. I mean, my family's not here, so it's not, no offense to you guys, it's not the perfect situation if my family was here, but I do feel that there aren't many places that I'd rather be. So if we could spend a little bit more time here, get the most out of the sun. Could be cloudy tomorrow, you never know. Could get hit by a bus later on today, you never know. So let's enjoy the sun.
I'll drop those batteries.
To upload the podcast before we.
Yeah, exactly. I'll give you my passport. No, brilliant. Well, listen, thank you so much for having us.
No, thank you for being here. It's been great to discuss everything with you guys.
I think just the fact that we've all travelled a distance to spend time under the sun and talk about the sun is very special as well.
Yeah, it is. It is.
You're like one of the pioneers, like for such a long time in this field, quite a niche field, you could say. And I guess it was some lonely times as well, I could imagine. I think all of us kind of went through the same journey in a way, and now we found each other, and it's just cool to meet people across the world who.
I was so happy with starting to meet these kids rolling out of school in 2015 with master's degrees who were every bit as wanted to nerd out about the sun as, talking about all these equation of time or the analemma, all these things that it's fascinating it can be missed, and there's a real beauty in it. the patterning of light, as we live our lives and go about things. And if you can start to notice that layer of information, I think it makes life a bit richer.
Do you think there is more movement in this direction? Like more people? I'm just thinking, like, I saw this post recently that high-rise buildings in China, they do have now very big balcony platforms. Like you couldn't even call it a balcony. It's like bigger than your terrace.
There's a
you always have sun exposure. Even there's another one above you. And this is something which I think is really driven by the awareness of.
Yeah. I mean, that has a double-edged sword, because if the climate's right, you can get a lot of hours on that balcony. But in a climate like the Scandinavian climate, you're sort of sacrificing a lot of the indoor light for maybe limited outdoor access during the year. But it's a tough question as to the balance there. There's things you can do where the balcony is not over a window, but there's a door connected to it, and then it wraps around a part of the facade that is solid. And then it's like,
if it's intelligently done, and you have this like towards the east and the west, when the sun is still low on the horizon, and it shoots into the room, and then when it's going to the south, like you have some shading.
Like
the caves were done like tens of thousands of years ago.
Well, like anything else, if you look into it, you can really do a good job.
Yeah.
If it's just sort of mass produced, as everybody gets a 2-meter balcony, regardless of their orientation, and then maybe there's
let's hope they are more intelligent about it. Could be. Why not? There is software.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of a waste if it just ends up dark and storage for bikes.
Yeah.
And that has happened. So, like most things with daylight, there's so many things involved. As you know, different solar angles and the different angles and geometries of things around it. It's very complex to try to. It's difficult to make. There's some generalizations, but each case, to look at it in detail is sort of a necessary thing if you're gonna. You can't just take a one size fits all approach to it. And I guess in mass production of housing, that's often the way. And I've got to appreciate that to some degree, because it holds costs down. But there maybe could be a little bit more discussion about, well, what is it that how is this actually working when people are living there, and are they getting what they think they're getting?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was awesome. Thanks for listening to Sunlight Matters, brought to you by Shadowman, where we explore how sunlight influences the way we build, design and live each day. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, follow and leave a review on your preferred streaming platform. You can also search Sunlight Matters on Google to find all our episodes, guest information and resources about sunlight analysis, solar exposure and the best home orientation for natural light. You can also head over to shadowmap.org, where you can download our iOS app for free today to visualize how sun is currently impacting your life. We appreciate you being part of the conversation, and we'll see you next time, where you can keep exploring the world through the lens of light.